Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today I wanted to talk to y'all a bit about my cat, Squishy. So Squishy is my one and only current pet. He is also my little mascot on my live stream, as well as he is Instagram famous. And I have a lot of people that ask a lot of questions about him, and so many people who love him and enjoy him. So I thought that we would take a moment and talk about him because, I mean, he is the star of the show. So how I came across Squishy is a rather sad story. Back in 2012/2013, my mom actually found Squishy under a shelf at a pet store. And he was not an escaped pet that had been for sale at this pet store. He was abandoned there by somebody. And I will give them credit that at least they abandoned him in a building where he could be warm and not be exposed to the elements or predators, but they abandoned him in an inappropriate location nonetheless. And unfortunately, this is a huge problem in that a lot of people will purchase animals, most often puppies and kittens, as Christmas presents. And then for whatever reason, people will abandon those Christmas presents. Whether it's they didn't realize how much work and how much money it was going to be, or they already have a pet and that pet is not jiving with this new animal. Insert scenario here. The amount of animals that are dumped Christmas presents is devastating, and it just doesn't need to happen. And unfortunately, Squishy was one of those Christmas dumps. And we suspect that he was dumped because whatever resident animal they had, we suspect either a full-grown cat or probably a dog, bit his face. And they panicked and they dumped him because he had bite marks and scabs all over his head and his face. And to this day, he is scared of any animal that is larger than him, which explains a lot. And so my mom was at the pet store that day because at the time my mom had 2 small dogs, so she was shopping for basic supplies for her dogs, and she found Squishy. And so she thought that maybe he had escaped from his cage, and she decided to just carry him around the store with her while she was doing her shopping, and she would just return him once she got to the checkout. And once she got to the checkout, she was like, "Oh, one of your kittens escaped." And the lady looked at her and was like, "We don't have any kittens right now." So of course, my mom took him home with her. Now, a little bit of backstory about why my mom would be so readily okay with taking him home with her is my mom and I used to volunteer at the West Suburban Humane Society, a no-kill animal shelter, back from when I was in high school all the way up to when I was in community college. And we stopped volunteering there once I went away to Columbia College, Chicago, because the logistics of it just were not practical anymore. So we volunteered there for about 6 years. In addition to that, we both have experience with having cats as pets, both in my childhood and even previously when my mom was growing up. So we're both very familiar and comfortable being around cats, as well as having the animal shelter as a resource. My mom felt very comfortable with taking him home, and her intentions were to take him to the animal shelter. But she wasn't going to be able to take him directly to the animal shelter because it was the holidays and they were closed. So that's why she took him home with him, which was her initial mistake or fortune, whichever way you want to see it. And she brought him home, and of course I declared right there, "This is my child. He is mine now." And my brother was actually the one to name him. My brother is the one who named him Squishy, and I thought the name was so adorable that it just stuck. We had no idea that he would be the behemoth that he is today. I knew he was going to be big, but I had no idea how big, y'all. When Squishy was a kitten, when he was found, he was only about 3 months old, and we made that estimation based on his teeth and on his behavior development. So where exactly he was in his behavior, the types of activities that he liked doing, his energy level, and also where exactly his eyes and his ears were at in that different stages of kitten. Their eyes, ears, and their tail also are at different developmental stages, and you can usually guesstimate how old they are based on those markers. And he was the size of a 6-month-old kitten at only 3 months, and his paws and his tail were huge. much. But again, I thought maybe his breed was just a bigger breed. I never dreamed he would be this big, y'all. So I took him in, and he was my new child. I call him my unplanned child, because prior to that, I also had adopted my cat Lady from that exact animal shelter when I was in college, and the following year I adopted my bunny Aries from the Red Door Chicago animal shelter. So I already had 2 pets, and Squishy made 3. And they all got along really well. And another marker that made me suspect about what happened to Squishy is that at first he was really scared of Lady. Now, this is not normal cat behavior. Normally, if you present a kitten to a female cat, the kitten will automatically warm up to her and usually trigger that mothering instinct, and they'll bond and have a mother cat and kitten type relationship. Lady immediately bonded with Squishy and tried to take him under her wing, but he was scared of her at first, which is why we really suspect that he was attacked by a larger animal. But eventually he did learn to trust her, and she took on that mothering role with him. A lot of people also asked me if my cats were ever interested in my bunny as prey, and the answer is no. They saw him as a weird cat. And the reason for this is because Lady was unusually small. She had her own list of health issues, and her being really small, Bunny was actually bigger than she was. And when Squishy was a kitten, he was about the same size as Bunny. So starting out, they were all about the same size. So they didn't see him as prey because he was the same size as them. They just thought he was a weird cat. And as Squishy got older, he never saw him as prey because he had bonded with him as a kitten. So he saw him as a part of his family unit. And it was actually really sad the day that Bunny died, and Squishy actively missed him. He actually did try to crawl into Bunny's cage. And then once I got rid of Bunny's cage, he was constantly sitting in the area where Bunny's cage used to be, and so I ended up making it as kind of like a little bedding area with his bed and his toys and stuff because he was spending so much time there anyway. It also hit Squishy really, really hard when Lady died in February of 2021 because that was his second mom, and he had bonded with her and they spent every waking moment together. And it was really, really hard for him when she died. I mean, it was also really, really hard for me when both Bunny and Lady died, obviously. But he did go through a type of grieving. And he's always had separation anxiety issues, but now it's way worse because Bunny is gone and Lady is gone, so he doesn't have another animal companion. And I have been asked by people, well, why don't you get another kitten or another cat to be his friend? And let me tell y'all, Squishy doesn't want a friend. I did live with a roommate briefly who had another cat, and Squishy wanted nothing to do with her. Absolutely nothing. And to be fair, she was a very rambunctious cat, and she was always trying to play with Squishy, and she was a little bit aggressive. And aggressive not in a bad way, just some cats are a little more aggressive in nature than others. He did not like that at all, y'all. So Squishy will not be getting a friend because he just very clearly does not want one. He had bonded with the animals that he had bonded with, and that's kind of that. But fortunately, because I work from home, I'm able to be with him all the time. So he only has to deal with when I have to go out to conventions and things like that, and every once in a while when I leave the house for errands or to visit people. So the majority of the time, I'm with him 24/7, so his separation anxiety isn't really that much of an issue. And when I do have to be gone for more than a day, I do make sure that there is somebody available to take care of him so that he's not just left alone with food and water all by himself, because that would be terrible for his separation anxiety. So I always make sure he has some sort of caretaker when I have to be absent. A big part of my journey with Squishy has been navigating his health issues, and a lot of that was done in tandem with navigating Lady's health issues. Now, Lady had an autoimmune disorder that attacked her intestines. So it was very hard for her to eat food and to keep it down, so she threw up a lot. And it was also very hard for her body to digest food and to absorb the nutrients of the food. Her intestines near the end of her life were very damaged. So she had to eat a lot of food every day, meaning she had a full bowl of dry food, and at her high point, she ate 4 cans of wet food every day. And that was what it took to keep her going. And at the end of her life, unfortunately, she did develop lymphoma, and she passed away in her sleep. And navigating all of this was especially hard because people really give you dirty looks when you have one cat that looks like a furry skeleton and the other one looks like a watermelon with legs. People make all sorts of judgments when they see that pair coming into the vet. And that is also a big part of why I have had the same vet for their entire lives at the Blum Animal Hospital in Chicago, because I needed to have an established relationship with a vet who could actually help us and also not judge us. And having access to that was extremely helpful in both Lady and Squishy's health journeys. Thankfully, Bunny was perfectly healthy his entire life. He died of old age. He lived to be almost 10 years old, which is about the lifespan for a rabbit. Especially because he was a particularly nervous rabbit, and that's saying something for a rabbit. So he was very tightly wound, and the fact that he made it almost to 10 is incredible. But for Lady and Squishy, it was very much a journey in figuring out their health issues and how to best address those health issues and give them the best quality life possible. And with Lady, it was a lot easier to figure out because through x-rays and some testing and eventually surgery, we were able to determine and correct some of the things that she had going on. Whereas Squishy, unfortunately, that old doctor term, when you hear hoofbeats, you think of horses, not zebras. Squishy has acromegaly, which in layman's terms is gigantism. Most of y'all will probably know Andre the Giant. He suffered from gigantism, aka acromegaly. And it took until just before the pandemic happened to get Squishy diagnosed with acromegaly. For that, we ran every test under the sun. We tested him for diabetes. We tested his thyroid. We tested his digestive tract. We tested him for everything, y'all. All the blood tests, all the scans, all the everything. And I'm not made of money. I have very limited financial means. So this was over the course of his life that each time I went to the vet, we would be like, okay, we tried these things. This time, we'll try this test, because I could only afford to do 1 or 2 tests at a time. I could not afford to be like, oh yes, run every test. I can't afford that. So this was over time, going back into the vet. Okay, what are we going to test him for this time? And we finally ran out of options where it was kind of a, okay, well, we tried everything and he has none of the things. Finally, acromegaly. That is what he has. And there are different treatment options for animals and people that suffer from acromegaly. One of them is growth inhibitors, but with how old Squishy is and where exactly he is in his development, he is not on medication at this time, but I am making sure that we are keeping everything in line with keeping him as healthy and as comfortable as possible. And a big part of his health journey was almost immediately he was put on a diet. So basically, once he grew into an adult cat, that's when he started gaining weight. He was growing the entire time, and that is a big part of what led us to the acromegaly diagnosis, is the fact that he wasn't just gaining weight, he was also getting physically bigger. His frame, his bones were getting bigger. There's a certain cutoff, and it varies between different breeds of cats, but it's usually between 1 and 2 years old is when a cat is done growing and reaches its full size. But she has never reached a full size. Every year he still gets a little bit bigger, and I don't mean fatter, I mean bigger. And that was the huge hallmarker for something is going on here, because that's not normal. The fact that he will be 10 years old in January of 2023 and he is still growing is not normal. So he was put on a diet immediately. That was step 1. That was back when he was about 2 years old. We put him on a diet, and he has been on a diet ever since. So his growth has absolutely nothing to do with his eating habits. He is not overfed. His diet is very strict. He is not given treats or people food. The only treat he gets is catnip. And even then, that is very closely monitored. It is only administered every once in a while. It is not something that I give him like every day or even every week or anything like that. It is a once in a while treat that he gets. So his nutrition intake is not a factor in his size, and honestly has never been a factor in his size, because even before he was put on a diet, I was still feeding him in moderation. And because I'm very lucky in that I have spent the majority of my adult life working from home, I've always been able to closely monitor his eating habits and Lady's eating habits, and I was able to train him for the most part. Cats are gonna cat, but for the most part, he knew that his food was his food and Lady's food was Lady's food, and he knew that it was naughty to eat Lady's food and that he was not supposed to. So it was very rare that he would decide to be naughty and try to eat her food. And I put emphasis on the word try, because he's not exactly subtle. He's not exactly hard to spot. He's not exactly sneaky. He was always disciplined anytime that he did try to eat Lady's food, and he definitely knew better. So that also wasn't a factor ever in his growth and development in eating Lady's food and not giving Lady the amount of food she needed and him getting more food than he was supposed to have. That was never a factor either. So some people have asked, well, how exactly did I make the decision to create this whole Instagram fame for Squishy? And the short answer is I didn't choose to. It just kind of happened. So back in the day, in the before times, when I had a lot of friends that I hung out on a regular basis and I had a lot of people over to hang out and party and things like that, I had a lot of friends that met Squishy in person, and all of them were absolutely blown away by just how giant he is. Literally every person that meets Squishy in person is shocked at how big he is, because it's crazy. I personally have never seen a cat that big in my entire life, and I've seen some big cats, y'all. But I had a couple of friends who suggested that I join this Facebook group called Chonky Cats. And so I joined it, and people loved him. Oh my goodness, do people love him. So I started regularly posting photos and videos on the Facebook group because it was a fun thing to do, and people got a lot of enjoyment out of it, so why not? And then I had people suggest that I should make an Instagram account for him because some people preferred Instagram over Facebook, and I was like, okay, that's not a hardship for me. I already live on social media as it is. One more account isn't really going to make a difference in my life, especially because I was just posting kind of when I felt like it, and it was just kind of whatever. I wasn't doing any of my SEO and marketing and all that kind of stuff with his Facebook or his Instagram posts because, quite frankly, I didn't care. I was just, here, enjoy a cat. You're welcome. Unfortunately, I would say it was a year or two after I joined the Facebook group, I was getting more and more negativity because of it. And I'm sure there's a whole host of reasoning behind it, but it was just drama that I just didn't need to deal with. It was people who insisted that I was overfeeding Squishy on purpose. It was people that insisted that I was posting him for some sort of personal benefit. And of course, people just being horrible at me, and not just like directly in the comments in the group, but also people like private messaging me and like texting me horrible things and stuff like that, and just all kinds of stuff that I didn't need to deal with. So I eventually stopped posting in the Facebook group, especially because not only did the moderators not do anything about people harassing me directly in the group, but near the very end, their solution to that problem was to just delete my posts. So I had had enough, and by then the Instagram was already growing by a lot, and I decided to focus on just posting on his Instagram. I made a farewell post on the cat group. It probably got taken down. I don't know. I haven't checked since I left. But I did make a farewell post letting people know that if they wanted to keep seeing him, here's his Instagram, and bye. That's how that went. To this day, I still post on his Instagram, not on any sort of like daily or like regular basis. It's just kind of a whenever I happen to have the time and feel like it, I post photos and videos of him, and people really love it. And again, I don't do any sort of SEO or marketing or anything to drive traffic or gain followers on there. I'm just like, here, have a cat, enjoy, and people lose their minds. And it just, I'm not gonna lie, it blows me away how much engagement he gets and just how fast of a following he has gained on that platform. I never in my wildest dreams thought that would happen. And just a few FYIs, I don't benefit financially from Squishy directly in any sort of capacity. We don't have any branding deals. We don't have any sponsorships. There's nothing monetarily tied to his Instagram account. The only way that I guess you could possibly argue that I profit off of him is that there are people who find my books and my art because they liked his Instagram first. Because I do have my main Instagram linked on his Instagram in the links, and that's just smart marketing right there, so that if people so choose to, they can find my other works and buy books and buy art, and that does financially benefit me. But I don't have any sort of call to action. I don't tell people to go do that. It's purely of their own volition, and I'm always very grateful for it. But I do not in any capacity use Squishy as some sort of tool that way. The closest way that I use him in any sort of marketing ploy tool would be on my Twitch channel. And a big part of that is because he insisted on being a part of it. Whenever I do my live streams, he has a rug that is right next to my desk that he likes to sit on. And while I'm working throughout the day or any of the other things that I do while sitting at my desk, he just loves being a part of things. And he also loves to talk to me while I do things, aka he likes to shout at me. Really? And so during my games, people would hear him just shouting in the background. And of course, if people hear a cat, they want to see the cat. So I got a separate webcam for him so that people could see him while I was doing my games, and I called it the Squish Cam. People loved it. And then as my channel grew and I was doing emotes and badges and things like that, I did create a Squishy emote and I created some Squishy badges and things like that because people really enjoyed them. But again, that had more to do with that it just kind of happened that way. I didn't plan that. I didn't have any sort of marketing strategy for that to happen. It just kind of happens. And again, I don't directly profit off of him. I directly profit off of doing the live stream. He just happens to also be there. And I don't have any plans or any desire to try to profit off him or get any sort of sponsorship or anything like that. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Having any sort of extra income will absolutely help me and by proxy also help him. But I don't have any desire to do any of that because that is a whole lot of responsibility and headache that I just don't need. And the majority of the time with pets, those kind of sponsorships come from things like food brands. And Squishy is on a special diet. We can't change his food brand and we can't give him treats and things like that. So the chances of having any sort of sponsorship outside of that are really small. And again, not really something that I very much want to deal with. Squishy has always been a really loving, laid-back, just chill sort of animal. He just has such a wonderful personality. He is so sweet and so loving. Of course, he has his moments, and that is a thing that I talk about on his Instagram too, is that he is 35 pounds. He is the size of a dog. And when he gets mad, it's dangerous. And he doesn't intend to be dangerous. He is not a dangerous animal. He is not an angry or aggressive animal. But when he gets mad, it can be dangerous based on his size and the fact that he is a cat, and cats have razor blades strapped to their feet. As well as his bite is really strong, y'all. It's scary. And so the solution to that is I minimize the amount of things that I have to do that make him angry. Years ago, I gave up on trimming his claws because he just acted like I was sawing his leg off. And yes, I know some people will say, well, maybe you did it wrong and you hurt him or you cut one of his quicks. And I can honestly say, no, that's not the case. He just has a thing where he just hates having his feet touched. Just hates it way more than a normal cat should, whatever reason. And he will fight me literally tooth and nail if I try to clip his claws, so I just don't. Because I am not physically strong enough to properly restrain him to do it anymore, and he just gets so unreasonably angry that he becomes dangerous, so it's just not worth it. Fortunately, having to do things like, for some reason he hates being brushed. I have to brush him. That's just a requirement for his basic grooming and his basic care. But I try to make sure that we make it count and we do it as fast as we can. And there is a point where he's just had enough and we're just going to stop. It doesn't matter if we are actually done grooming him or not. We're done. We be done. And that's just for my safety and for his safety, and also the fact that I don't want to promote any sort of negative associations for him, because that is how behaviors build. So I do everything in my power to keep him as healthy and as happy as possible. And to be honest, that's not really hard. And that's another question that I get from a lot of people is, what exactly does caring for him look like? And at the end of the day, what that really looks like is just feeding him his strict diet, which is feeding him 3/4 of a cup of his food into his little mouse feeders once a day. Literally it. Not complicated. He doesn't have a whole regime that I have to do with him or anything like that. It's just feed him this specific food, this specific amount into his little feeders. Make sure he has water, clean his litter box, and of course, give him all of the love and attention at all times. He needs all the love at all times. And that just means petting him a lot, talking to him, paying attention to him, just all that good stuff that you do with your pet anyway. He is not difficult to care for. Honestly, Lady was the most intensive animal that I have ever had to care for in my life. She was a lot. She was on medication. She had all sorts of stuff going on with her food. I had to constantly watch her to see if she was going to throw up and then take care of that. I had to take her to the vet a lot. It was a lot, y'all. It was a lot. Squishy, really not too different than having just a normal cat. So that factors into the fact that buying him a litter box, I had to find literally the biggest litter box that they had for sale in the pet store. It is a monstrous litter box. And the fact that, he has dog-sized water dishes, and they're the nice porcelain ones because they're heavier, because he does scoot them around, and it's harder for him to tip them over. And just other things to accommodate his size, that he just needs bigger things. The other thing that I have to accommodate him is he has little kitty stairs that lead up to my bed, because he does sleep on my bed with me. He does not have a little cat bed anymore. He just sleeps on my bed with me. That's where he prefers to be. So he is physically capable of jumping up and down off the couch, which he does on a daily basis. But my bed is an antique bed, and it's higher off the ground than typical modern day beds, as well as it's not good for him to jump down from that height. It's bad for his joints. So just for his personal safety and for his health, I just have little cat stairs that lead up to the bed just to make it easier for him, and so that I have the peace of mind that he's not going to hurt himself. But he is physically capable of jumping up and down off that bed. I just don't want him to do it. The last question that I frequently get is, what do I think Squishy's lifespan is going to be? And unfortunately, the question to that is, I don't know. Typically, cats can live anywhere from 15 to 20 years old, but that's depending on their breed and how healthy they are. And with Squishy, the real answer to that is that I have to monitor his weight and his food intake, and the real race is to prevent him from getting diabetes. Once he gets diabetes, it's over. Because of his acromegaly, we won't be able to properly control his diabetes, and he'll eventually die of that. That could happen tomorrow, it could happen next month, it could happen next year, it could happen 10 years from now. I don't know. But I do know that every day with him is a gift, and I'm grateful for every day that I have with him, and I do truly hope he lives for another 10 years, but I'm not going to hold my breath that that's going to be realistic in any capacity. Because let's face it, the fact that Lady lived to be 17 years old is crazy, y'all. Like, the last few vet visits that I had before she died, the vet was shocked she was still alive. Like, with all of the stuff that she had going on health-wise, she should not have lived as long as she did. And Lady just had this very fierce spirit of not caring. She basically told the Reaper, I'm not done yet, come back later. And she is not as fierce as she was. Let's be real, y'all. He is a soft little potato. He does not have a fierce spirit like her. So I don't think he has the capacity to fight the way that she did, as well as his health issue is very different than hers was. So it's kind of something that once he reaches that point, there isn't really a whole lot for him to fight against anyway. So we're just taking things one day at a time, and I'm just grateful for the time that I have him for, and we're just going to take it from there. So that is the unfortunate answer to that question. I love him so very much. He is basically my child. That's how I treat him, but not in the sense of like the weirdo person that like, you know, treats them like a human child. I mean it is in terms of like a replacement sort of thing, that he fills that space for me, being my child. But he is treated like a cat because that's what he is. He's a cat, and we follow training and behavior for having a cat, not a human child, because that's weird. Don't do that. That's how you mess pets up. Don't do that. They are animals. Embrace it. But yeah, I'm so grateful to have him in my life. He has been there for me through some very dark times, and he still continues to be there for me. I like to call him my little emotional support monster because he knows whenever I'm having a rough day, and he's always there for me. He's just such a good boy, and I'm just so grateful that I was blessed with having him in my life. And I am so grateful that so many other people can enjoy him too via Instagram and via the old Facebook account, that he's brought so much joy to other people. So I hope you all liked this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.